All right, welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. Hey, doing something a little different here. I'm actually traveling in the Delta Sky Club in Cincinnati, and I realized I needed to give an update as far as what the heck I'm doing right now with my podcast. Some of you have noticed, hopefully most of you have noticed, that I started doing some fun car-themed songs, and I had those on YouTube as well as on the podcast, which caused a little bit of confusion, so I apologize for that. So going forward, what I'm going to do is I'm only going to have the podcasts, audio only on your favorite podcast provider and on YouTube as well. But I will launch some fun songs a couple times a week on YouTube and on Spotify. And so if you want to hear the songs in its entirety, just go to YouTube. You can check the playlist called Octane FM. There's like 42 songs on there right now. I will continue going. And then for the podcast, what I'll do is I will have a fun song 30 seconds at the beginning that kind of relates to the subject of the podcast, and the entire song at the end. So you will still hear a little bit of this fun music, but if you want to hear all of it, go to Spotify or go to YouTube and you can check it out. So for this podcast, I picked pop-up headlights because you'll hear Dave and I talk about valuation trends and how the next generation is influencing some of the cars that are showing up in these valuation tools. So if you're like me, you like the pop-up headlights from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, take a listen to this song. And like I said, listen to the end if you want to hear the entire song. As always, thanks for listening.
Cruising down the street in a retro ride, flip a little switch and pop they hide. Then I hit the lights and up they go like robot eyes in a late night show. Kids on the sidewalk yelling whoa, like I just did a magic show. Forget your Teslas, forget your screens, I got headlamps straight from your dreams. Pop-up headlights, peekaboo glow, winking at traffic.
RM Sotheby's is the world's largest collector car auction house by total sales. They are the preeminent market maker of high-quality collector cars and collections, regardless of size or complexity. By working in partnership with the Sotheby's team and its network of 80 offices in 40 countries, RM Sotheby's has established the largest client network of any collector car auction house in the world. Join the RM Sotheby's family by connecting with one of their car specialists at rmsotheby's.com or contact me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com. All right. Hey, it's Greg Stanley with the Collector Car Podcast, and we have a returning guest, and a returning guest for a very good reason, because he's all about market valuation trends. So Dave Kinney, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing well. How are you this morning?
Good. I'm glad you're back on the podcast. We've caught up a couple times since you were last on, and I always find it fascinating talking to you about market trends, because I obviously reference the valuation database all the time. So if you would tell us a little bit about what you do in your day job, but then also what you do from a valuation perspective.
What I do in my day job is two things. I actually have an appraisal business, U.S. appraisal, that I've had since 1990, which is just incredible that I'm that old. And then also, I'm the guy who put together the original Cars That Matter price guide that became the Hagerty Price guide. So I'm the one responsible for all that madness that goes on 4 times a year when we update the Hagerty Price guide, and we just finished an update just a little while ago.
Well, and that's why I wanted you on to kind of give us an update, because as you know, it's kind of topsy-turvy out there in the market. A lot of it is, let's say, global dynamics and, political things with tariffs and all sorts of stuff. It felt like, it didn't matter who the president was. I feel like in January, it just was, the election was over. We knew who the president was. And I don't know that it mattered much which party won at that point. It felt like there was a big sigh of relief in Arizona. It was good auctions happening, some good results. And I felt like it was going to be a very strong year. But then we have all the tariff wars start kicking in, and it seems like we're still in the unsure arena of collector car valuations right now. Is that true, or is that totally false?
No, it's a great read, and you know, I was joking with a friend of mine not too long ago that I can find 10 experts that tell you that it's time to sell everything and you know head for the hills and everything else, and then another 10 who say what a great buying opportunity. So I don't think any of these you know so-called experts know for sure because we've got so many unanswered questions right now. We do know, you know, that a number of cars have gone up and a number of cars have gone down. We're seeing more cars go down in value than we are seeing cars go up. Two things to remember. Number one, you don't buy a collector car because of its value, and you don't buy it because it's supposed to go up. You buy it because you love it, and the icing on the cake is when it goes up. That's number one. You know, if you could imagine if you were in a hobby and you collected old Chinese puzzles and they were the thing that, you know, that wound your watch, you just absolutely loved them. Can you imagine making your choice based on, you know, which one's going to go up in value versus which ones gives you that pleasure? And then when you're done with all those puzzles, they're pretty well worthless anyway. So it's a different scenario with cars. That's number one. The number two thing is that the I've said it so many times, I feel like I should just, you know, have a lapel button that somebody press. Great cars bring great money. Great examples of, you know, your Mustang right in the background there, you know, that sort of thing, that the Pontiac below it, great examples bring great money, and that holds true with Ferraris, it holds true with Austin Healey's, it holds true with everything. And this market still loves great cars, so that's something to keep in mind as well. We have some interesting you know trends that we're following, but to be real honest with you right now, everyone's you know moving along slowly down the stream, but everybody's pedaling real hard underneath because we don't have that direction that we've had in other big times of turnover. Will give you some examples. After 9/11, you know, a few of us thought, well, that's it for the collector car market for a long, long time. The reaction from people was, wait a minute, life's fleeting. Maybe I should buy what I want. And that was a little bit of a boost to our market. After the real estate crash in 2008 or 2006 through 2008, whichever year you want to pick, people got out of real estate, they got out of stocks, and one of the things they went into was old cars. So our market became very, very hot and stayed super hot really through 2014, which was kind of the, you know, the recent high on you know your generic collector car. So you know, with the tariffs coming in, with all this sort of stuff, we really don't know what the reaction is going to be. I will tell you that I think I'm very smart because I bought a whole bunch of sets of tires and I bought some products that are made overseas, and I bought them in late November, December, and January. So I got away without seeing the price increase on them, and it's not because I'm so smart; it's because I need them you know, for the next 2 years, and I just pulled up some of the, you know, some of the things I was going to have to buy in 2025 and even 2026, pulled them up, you know, maybe 5 months, 6 months, 8 months, you know, 13, 20 months. You know, I did avoid some of that, but, you know, some of it's coming back to haunt me now. I just bought some Sumitomo brake parts out of Japan, no duty at all, and you know, and some other miscellaneous parts for cars that I have, you know, just for fun to have them in stock for when I'm going to need them.
So I did. So is there? All right. So I'm stumbling right now because I just looked up a bunch of information. Like I pulled like 50. I won't say they were random. Like I want to see what a Going's doing. Like some of the iconic cars, a '57 Chevy. I want to see what and a 240Z is looking like. Just the cars that are kind of the ones you think of immediately. An '88 BMW M3. Like what are kind of these cars we all think about? We all know they're collectible, and kind of get a read. And man, it was all over the place as far as latest trends in the latest 12 months. Now I did see some, the latest 3 months, which surprised me, some ups. So I know you said the best of the best will always bring the money. Let's take those number one Concord cars out. Are you seeing any trends from like generational shifts? We've all talked about the 40s cars are declining. Anyone who wanted a 57 T-Bird, they're selling it. But I just pulled 57 T-Birds in the latest, 12 months. They're up 7.4%. And that's for the two barrel car. The rarer ones are up even more. So anything from a broad swath, take out the best of the best, or is it kind of a mixed bag right now?
Well, for a lot of people, they see this as a buying opportunity, and so there are a lot of people who are, changing up their stable or buying more cars, to have. Um, I don't. I mean, I agree with you, Greg. I think the long term on 40s and 50s cars is not great. But usually, what happens is this, and I think you can demonstrate this with, Model A Fords. The value doesn't go down. It's just that the value of the dollar does. So, your fantastic Model A Ford that was worth $28,500 in 1979 is still worth $28,500 or somewhere around there. It's just in 2025 which buys you a lot less. So this whole thing about cars being worthless and cars being valueless, just not true, because there still seems to be, as we say in the car world, an ass for every seat. So a lot of the times when stuff gets more affordable, it opens it up to younger people. It opens up to the more adventurous people. I'm going to McPherson College here, and well, tomorrow is when I go. We have our big car show out there in McPherson, Kansas. And I'm just always shocked at the rides that people have. We're talking 65 Mustangs, but we're also talking 79 Cadillac sedans, DeVilles, cars that, you and I probably, as a grandma car for our generation. That's who owned the car. But you see people who are interested in them because they are interesting and cheap and fun. And so, I'm going to see a lot of Corvairs. I'm going to see a lot of Camaros. We're going to see a lot of cars that are in, repairable shape, but most of them with needs of, with lots of needs out there that these college students are buying. Now, these are special students because they're all in the automotive restoration program, but it does give you a window into what people like.
I've been trying to see if there's a trend. You're going to laugh at me when I say this, but if there's a trend towards four-door cars being worth more, because it seems like that's not as big of a deal with today's kids. They don't mind the four-door M3, BMW. The E39 is one of the hottest cars out there. I didn't have a chance to look into it too much, but do you feel like, as it changes, stick shift cars will be worth less because they don't know how to drive it? Four-door cars might be worth more than they have typically been, because the stigma against them has declined. They want to take their friends with them. Any thoughts on that?
I think you're absolutely right for some of the four-door cars. I mean, it's a way you can afford the car of your dreams. So if you don't have the money for the two-door or the long roof, as I love to call wagons, because nobody called them that in the day, but now it's long
Your
roof.
shooting brake.
Right, yeah, shooting brake, yeah, exactly. So anyhow, if you can't afford that, there's nothing wrong with having the four-door version of it. And as a matter of fact, like you said, you can sleep in the back seat, which is something that 20-year-olds have been known to do quite a bit. When they're out on the road, and they don't have that $180 for a hotel room because they're expecting to find a hotel for $80. And also, like you said, you can take your friends along with them. I noticed that a lot of the older and kind of on their last legs four-doors become a fun transportation option for when you can buy something for $1,500 that the one that you really want is 11,500, for example. Why not just have fun with the $1,500 one? You're going to have the same fun, the same amount of problems. It's not as cool. Everybody gets that, but you own one, so you have the ownership and experience. And I do see that in a lot of cases. Now, it's a special young kid who wants to get involved in a car that needs a lot of work. So I'm not so sure about from the people who are able to put the money together to have mom or dad or grandpa to help out. They might not be happy with it, but they might do something that appraisers call the principle of substitution. Principle of substitution means if you can't afford X, you buy Y. The kind of the long story principle of substitution car I used to use was a Daytona Spider, a Ferrari Daytona Spider. If you couldn't afford one of those, you might look at a Maserati Ghibli Spider. And the list is endless. The Mustangs versus Cougars. Cougars, arguably a more luxurious version of a Mustang, but they always seem to sell for less, unfortunately, for Cougar owners. Firebird Camaro, the same sort of thing. And then there's the outliers, WRX versus WRX STI. If you can't get an STI, you might just go with a WRX, especially for a daily driver. And that goes on forever, and that's been going on forever. So I think the cool part of this is that I know a couple of people who bought cars with bad Carfaxes, and they bought them with bad Carfaxes on purpose because they got them a lot cheaper. And I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of the
Yeah.
time, we only have two Carfaxes. We have a good Carfax and a bad Carfax, which is ridiculous because, that M5 with a bumper that got ripped off 11 years ago in a parking lot accident has a bad Carfax. And so does the one that was underwater for a week. So choose your bad Carfax, right? I mean, I'll take the one with the bumper ripped off because you're going to get it for less money. You're going to sell it for less money, but why not have all the fun? Nobody needs to know. I mean, you don't have to walk around with a copy of the Carfax on your windshield or, show it to the cop when you get pulled over. It's between you and whoever buys the car, or when you buy the car, or whoever you sell it to. So, there's a lot of contrarian stuff you can do in the old car world just like that.
Well, it's funny because I feel like, and I looked into it, they all seem to be a little flat or down, but I was looking at cars, specifically Porsches in like 2005, because my wife and I bought a Porsche Boxster S. And talk about a car for cheap. I mean, you're getting into that last of the analog, last of the manual. I mean, granted, you had another 8 or 10 years, but it's a snapshot of time where the power is good. So I bought this little Boxster S, 2,100 miles in a collection since new, well maintained, 2,100 miles for 30 grand.
That's
And
yeah.
I love that car. I'm like, man, this thing is freaking awesome.
Yeah, such a sweet spot in a car that only went out of warranty because of the age, not because of the miles. I love it when that
Yeah.
sort of thing happens. And it was obviously anybody who had it in a collection, it was probably a babied car that was inside all the time and everything else.
It smelled
I
new,
think, yeah, I think Boxsters are a real sweet spot. They're going away because the early Boxsters are being picked up by a lot of people when you see them come up. And keep in mind, in the typical German car, American car, everything, remember when Boxsters came out, the 911 guys said, "Oh, it's a secretary's car."
Yeah.
They've said that about so many cars. I mean, the BMW guys about the M3. Oh, that's for the hairdressers. It's not for me, whatever. Now everybody discovers it's the coolest car out there for the money. And it happened with the Miata. I mean, when Miatas came out, it's like, well, who'd want that? Well, everybody wants a Miata, unless you're my size, in which case, I'm looking over the header bar when I'm trying to drive it, and you don't want to see a video of me getting in or out of Miata. So.
Well, what's funny is every time I say that to somebody, especially if it's a Porsche guy who's got a 911 GT3 or whatever, the response is always the same. It's like, oh, that's a great car. Like it's never. They're excited about it, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the 911s have gotten so big. People look
and
back
expensive.
And expensive.
And actually to the point of unaffordability for a lot of people. And I think that's part of it. Well, I think the other thing is, let's just go ahead and say it. I'm an auto journalist, so auto journalists are responsible for that as well. I mean, the Audi TT, loved and then hated and then loved again. I mean, when the Boxster came out, same sort of thing. It was, there's a whole bunch of people say, well, if you can't afford a 911, you might think about it, but really it's not a car for you. Well, it always was a car for you. I mean, my favorite is the Z8. It was damned in the press as the German Corvette. And I just love that because, number one, there's nothing wrong with a Corvette. Thank you very much. I mean, if we made Corvettes in Italy and imported them here with prancing horses on them or bulls or something like that, we'd all go crazy for them. That's number one. Number two, when you damn a car by comparing it to another car that's pretty damn good, it's actually hilarious. Now Z8 is an unbelievably well-known collector car and also renowned for its prowess. I mean, it's a pretty damn good car that you can get in, push the button and go, which is not true for a whole bunch of older cars.
Well, let's get into some of the results from Q1. Nothing specific unless you have something specific.
I do have some specific. I have a couple specifics because I think this is the first one is the best buy tip you're going to get today.
All right. Well, let's start there. Yeah. And any general trends you saw or aha moments you saw.
Yeah, well, we had, I've got a list here of 5 that I just pulled up that another friend of mine named Greg helped me with. One of
Eyeball.
our Yeah.
Okay.
Our biggest downer in the last book was the Bentley S3, down 22%. Now, let's hold on a second. Bentley S3, the big roly-poly Bentley, okay. I love those cars, and I think this is a hell of a buying opportunity. There were a lot of, let's just put it out there, lousy Rolls and Bentleys on the market in the last couple of years. A whole bunch of them came to auction. You know the reason why. There's a whole bunch of people who are going to know the reason why. There's a big collection of cars out of the Middle East that came. That was part of it. And all of them kind of, not all of them, but a whole bunch of them had questionable mechanical stuff, had no mechanical work on them, and they sold very, very cheap. And that really depressed the market. I would buy an S3 Bentley in a minute. I love the looks of the car. It is the Rolls Royce with the, without the Parthenon grill. No difference other than the hubcaps, the badging, and the grill. And, these things at that kind of price are just amazing. Another one that we saw go down was the 68 through 71 Mercury Cyclone, went down 15%. Our 58 through 60 Thunderbirds down 15%. Our Tesla Roadster, we don't have to go into the reason why, is down 11%. Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4 also down 11%. And part of that is because a lot of them came on the market and they were not great examples. So, can you imagine a VR4 3000? Not a great example. There are a whole bunch of them that were used up and thrown away, and I think some have been resurrected back on the market. So, but those are the downers that I just kind of wanted to point out that we had that were out there. But I think that when you have a car like that that goes down, what a great buying opportunity when you got, maybe 15 or 20% off on the cars that you actually like. I think that represents nothing other than a great buying opportunity. So,
Well, Mitsubishi, the 3000, that's an interesting one because the downgrade would be the Dodge Stealth, right?
yeah,
And I don't
exactly.
think that came in the same high end spec that the Mitsubishi did. You had that VR4, whatever they called it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure that the Stealth had. I know they had a higher performance version. I just don't know if it went to the top as the Mitsubishi did. I always thought those were gorgeous cars.
Yeah, they're
Um,
cool cars. I mean, I like them a lot. So, yeah, get one.
so like I said, I pulled like 50, and what surprised me is, yes, I have some negative numbers, maybe 12,
Uh-huh.
but then there's like 12 flat, and then there's like 20 something that are up. So that little bit surprised me. Now that could have been just the luck of my draw, but maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, which ones do you want to talk about?
The one that really surprised me was down 15%. The 2013 BMW M3 Lime Rock, the special edition orange one. That one surprised. I think it's orange. That one really surprised me because I see BMWs. It's being pretty hot. M3 is pretty hot. That's a limited edition, 2013. You could argue it's depreciation, but they made those in fairly small numbers. I thought, like under
Yeah.
1,000.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to that one specifically. And it could be just once again an example of one or two cars getting out in the marketplace and people not understanding what they were. That unfortunately drives statistics, and so
Yeah.
a lot of the times we'll try and filter them out because we know that there's a enthusiast base that's looking for them. It's just that they were presented in the wrong forum. I mean, we caught wind of it as it's not going to be a Facebook marketplace sale, but a estate sale somewhere or something like that, and that does happen.
So someone got lucky, maybe. So
Yeah, it could very well be. I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, you're an auction guy. I'm an auction guy. When people say I'm going to go to an auction and I'm looking at, only buying red 65 and 66 Mustangs, I say you're not going to find the car you want. But if you say I'm looking for a pony car built from 64 to 71, there's going to be 8 or 9 cars there, and one of them is going to get out cheap. And so, I
yeah.
mean, if that's something that makes you happy, look at all of them. Don't just look at the one. There's always going to be a car that sells for too much money. There's always going to be a car that sells for too little money, and that's why they call it an auction. I mean,
Yeah.
there's great buys at auctions that are just astoundingly well attended that do incredibly well, but you could still find one or two in there that are that quote, got away. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, the M3s, when I pull numbers, I'm like, "All right, well, how'd that next generation M3, how does that look?" So I pulled a couple M3s. The 97 M3 was down 12.7. The 88, the first M3 was down 6.9. Now I could see that as being just so hot for such a long time.
Yeah.
2008 M3 was down 5.4. So a little trend on the M3s, it seems, which is a little bit surprising, but the global dynamics we have going on right now could easily explain that. Um,
A lot of people also are out of the market right now. They're basically
yeah.
sitting on their hands trying to figure out what to do. So it is it's hilarious because we had our easiest update ever for the last quarter of our book. And this was one of the hardest ones for the first
Mhm.
quarter of this book. I mean, it was almost embarrassing how few changes there were. And we're paid to look at these things and make changes. And when you go through an entire file and you come up, it's like, I can't justify a single change here. You kind of get upset because it's like, I just spent 9 hours looking at all these files and I can't justify a dollar difference. That was not the problem this book because we had lots and lots of changes. I got one for you. The Honda CRX SI, one of the biggest ones we've ever had, biggest gains, 53%. Now, of course, the CRX is a car that was built to be thrown away. They were fantastic cars, and back in the day, and I'm talking 10 years ago, you'd see them for sale 280,000 miles. When you found one with 160,000 miles on it, was almost like finding a brand new car, because they got used. They were little roller skates. They're great cars, and there's going to be
I
a
love
market.
those cars. I would
Everybody
love to
does.
have one. You just can't find it, and
No,
that's
and
probably why they've gone up so much. Because when they are found, it rings the bell,
I,
you
I
know?
think I think that we're going to see very, very shortly a couple of not tuners, but actually restorers who buy these things and go in and redo them, because a brand new, fresh to market one would ring the bell at a lot of auctions, or at a lot of websites when they had it. And now you're at the point where a lot of the people that own the CRX, the SI, they owned it new. Now they're in their money making years. They're 39, they're 41, they're 52. All that sort of stuff, or maybe even 60 for some of them who were late adopters, and they remember the good times they had with that car. It was there's nothing more fun than driving a slow car fast. But there's also the corollary with that. Having a little tiny car that goes fast is also, just all kinds of fun.
Well, that relates to the big outlier I found that I gave you a heads up on. I was like, "Whoa, I've never seen this up so much." The '83 original Volkswagen GTI up
Yeah,
80.7%. That is
yeah,
unbelievable.
and if you put the whole generation 83 through 92 together, we've got 30% up.
Okay.
So you've got, and which is still a huge number. You've got a lot more appreciation of how cool those cars were. I mean, the GTI was a game changer. Everybody knows that. I mean, from its advertising with its with its original early ads where they redid the Beach Boys classic Little GT. I mean, not Beach Boys. That was Jan and Dean, I guess. Classic Little GTO, and called it Little GTI, and it made a huge, huge difference in the marketplace. Very, very smart marketing on the car, but they had the Volkswagen was writing the checks, but the GTI could cash it. It was really, really, really a fun car, and I think we're going to see more of those that have been redone as well. That people are going to spend the money to do a complete restoration on, because they bring a smile to your face as soon as you see them. I mean, if you're from the
Yeah.
generation that understood those cars, it's like, wow. And the badging on them, they've got the great colors. It's all as basic colors and stuff like that. It's a wonderful car.
Well, let me throw a couple more out here to you that surprised me that they were flat. So if you remember 2014, 2015, we had the three Halo cars, the McLaren P1, the LaFerrari, and of course the 918, Porsche 918. That's always fascinated me because when you look at the value for those cars, the McLaren P1, number one condition, 2.1, the 918 Weissach 2.8, but then you look at the LaFerrari 4.4. And in the latest 1 year, the LaFerrari and the McLaren are both flat, while the 918's gone up 12%. So obviously still some outliers there in the last year. I think maybe it was over a year ago, but I know we had that record breaking one, the white one. Um, but also the Visoc, that's the package everybody wants as well. Does it surprise you, those three Halo cars, that they're so different when it comes to valuations today?
Well, I think Porsche has defied gravity for a very, very long time in the marketplace. And I don't know if those days are going to end at sometime soon or they're ending now, or whether that's just an indicator of how strong a brand Porsche is, was, and has been. The LaFerrari, it's a hell of an investment at $4 million to buy one. So you're more than in rarefied air. The P1, I think that a great long-term hold, but I think for a lot of people, you could find something you like better than a P1. It's not an explainer car. I call the explainer cars like going back in time. Iso Grifo was a great explainer car. You'd take it to a car show and everybody go, "What is this?" And
Yeah.
then you could explain it by saying it's a Corvette with an Italian suit on it, which is damning it with very faint praise at that point because it's completely re-engineered. But explaining to somebody about the car, the P1 has surpassed that. But the McLaren brand is not as vibrant all over as it was even a couple of years ago. And McLaren has made a hell of a lot of models, and it gets confusing when they have a run of 18 or 12 or something like that that has a difference that might not be a distinction. And I think that's hurt the McLaren brand, my opinion, going back for the last couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. And also, I know like people say, well, when the 720 came out, it was just as fast as the P1, looked a lot like it, and the price difference was significant. Some of the flat cars that surprised me, we don't need to go into them, but the 959, both the Comfort and the Sport were flat. I wanted to look into the 50s a little bit. The 57 Bel Air convertible was flat,
Yeah.
which to me means it's probably going to go up soon because it was declining for a while. And then the Chrysler 300C, that was flat. I pulled those because I'm like, well, those are kind of, in my mind, the pinnacle cars of a generation there, where even if the demographic ages out, there's people will still want those cars.
Well, think about it. Let's just go with the 57 Bel Air convertible. $125,000 was kind of the benchmark for where a great one would sell. And a lot of people restored those cars. And those people who restored those cars 20 years ago, if they were 65, they're either not with us anymore or they're 85. And so 85-year-olds are not known for buying a lot of cars. So, I mean, there are 85-year-olds out there right now at a car dealership. I'm sure they're buying cars and also at a classic car dealership, but it slows you down. Age will slow you down from those buying trends. And I think part of that is that. So if, let's say you had the $150,000, $125,000, 57 Bel Air convertible. If you had to sell it, you'd be hard pressed to do anywhere near that kind of money unless the car was fresh. So we see those cars now 85, 95, 105, that sort of thing. And the people who are buying them weren't necessarily the people who remembered them when they were new. They remembered them because a neighbor, a friend, their dad, their granddad had one. So they're not out there spending all the money to get granddad's car. They just like to have it, but they have a price point in mind.
Yeah, I agree. And then I did look in some more 50s cars that were positive. The 58 Eldorado Baritz, the 57 Corvette Fuelie. That's one of the most iconic Corvettes. Like I said earlier, the Thunderbird was positive. Another outlier that surprised me, and I pulled this one because I did a video on one of these. This is a 2015 Cadillac CTSV, not necessarily the manual wagon, just like a regular CTSV. I did a video one at a car show, like a short, 60-second short. And I noticed YouTube will give you a recap of your most watched videos. And like a week ago, that showed up as my most watched video from 3 years ago. And I'm like,
Wow.
all right, that tells me something's going on with CTSVs here. And so I looked into it, and it's up 2.9%. But you still have the Blackwing going on right now. That's a monster of a car, 650 something horsepower manual. So curious to see how the CTSVs do. And the XLR-V or whatever it was called, the two-door that was based on the Corvette. That one, I think that one was flat. So any thoughts on the CTSV as a future collectible?
I always thought that, I mean, everybody wants a black one with, the four options or whatever it was. And I can't remember what they are. They want a 5-speed, or they want a manual. I'm sorry. They want, sports seats and whatever. I say buy the one that you want. There's some great ones out there. And, even if you can't afford the big dog car, the CTSVs are just fantastic cars. Once again, if they were European cars, they'd have a bigger following. They are not. They're American cars. The Cadillac brand has a little bit of a tag along with it because Cadillac's been around so long, and your depending on your age group, you might not know anybody who owns a Cadillac, or you might know, somebody older who owns a Cadillac and you weren't impressed with it. These cars were game changers, and I think for a long, long time they're going to be cars that would be fun to own and drive.
Yeah, they are for sure, and they're gorgeous. I really think, especially
Yeah.
the two-door coupe with the center exhaust coming out the back. Let me just I'll just rattle off some other cars that surprised me as far as their increase in the last year. Pick what you want to talk about. The one that really surprised me was an '88 Cadillac Brougham, which I believe is a four-door, up
Yes.
14%. That's $31,000 in mint shape. Carrera GT, Porsche Carrera GT is having a moment, 14.3%. I had a phone call about that car yesterday with a potential client. 93 Corvette ZR1 up 12.3. That thing had, those had languished for decades. Yeah, so quite a few things. The 1970 first year Datsun 240Z up 18.4. That's not really a surprise to me. But then you get into some other stuff, which to me is bucking the trend a little bit. The 1971 Corvette LT1 cars, the ZR1 is up 28.5%, but also not the ZR1, the base LT1, that little hot rod of an engine, small block, was up like 28%. So any of those popping on your radar as well?
Well, the 240Z has always been a real favorite of mine, and I like the early cars. We had tons of those. I think, by far and away the majority of them were imported to the United States, and they were cheap and reliable. I believe when they came out, they were $2,600 for, ready to go point and shoot 240Z, and they changed once again. They were a game changer car. They also are a little bit tricky to restore, but a lot of them are out there being restored. I think that's part of it. Your Eldorado Brougham, or not your Eldorado Brougham, but the Brougham that you mentioned. I have
Oh,
no
Cadillac.
idea.
Yep.
Yeah, the Cadillac. I have no idea why that one went up, but I'm sure that we saw a couple of
That's
really,
probably
really.
the only one that was sold
Yeah, well,
publicly.
no, we probably saw some really, really nice ones, which kind of set the bells ringing, and it was a really nice example, and it went for good money. But a lot of these cars were affordable when new. A lot of the cars that you just went through, the Corvettes never really, you know, totally outliers. You could afford one if you'd been working for a few years and had a pretty decent job, but it wasn't like you had to borrow money from left and right to get one. It was never a super expensive car. But I think a lot of people, in that 70s and 80s era are once again looking for the best of the best, and that's what they're finding.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. So, really, really quite a mixed bag when it comes to stuff, results. I didn't see like these massive, uh, trends based on, type of car, decade. I mean, I'm looking at the top. Let's see. Let me look at the top 10 here. 2004 Carrera GT, 1970 Datsun, 1972 Miura, 1978 Ford Bronco Custom,
Yeah, yeah.
67 Ferrari 330 GTC. Like there's like 3 or 4 decades. The Cadillac Brougham from the 80s, the 93 Corvette. Like there's something growing across the decades that surprised me. But to your point, they're very specific, very some of them are very special cars like the Miura SV. That's up 21.9%. Now, that was probably driven partially by obviously the junkyard sale last year. There were some of those Miuras that went kind of nuts.
Yeah, they were not number one cars, but boy,
No.
when they bring number two money for number four and number five car, it's it makes people pay attention. The one that I like that from that group that you didn't mention is 61 through 67 Lincoln Continental convertibles. They were
Mm,
dead in the water forever, and in the last, I'm going to say, 8 years, We've seen incredible growth in those. I mean, just, you see them now at some of the auctions. You see them represented 125,000 on up for some of the cars. I don't understand the retro mod Continentals as much as I understand, the very, very nicely won or tastefully kind of modified ones. But we've seen them sell for $300,000 now, which is a lot of money for a non-coach built American, standard line car, even though the Continental convertible was never a huge seller, and of course made big waves in the marketplace. The Kennedy era Lincoln, for those who need an image of it. So I knew those cars from when I was a kid. My dad was a Lincoln guy, so I spent a lot of time in the back seat of one going places. They're lovely, lovely cars, but as far as $200,000, not my $200,000. I love the look of them. I love the way they just stand out, and they look like nothing else, but not in the spaceship way, just in the iconic American way. And I think that's cool, and I think a lot of people appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to mention from valuation update that we haven't covered?
Yeah, we're working on the new book. We're starting right now. We still don't at this point. We're talking May here, 2025. We still don't have a direction. That's the interesting thing. There's a lot of times after an event, we get a direction, we go with that. I mean, not that we make our decisions based on that, but it's kind of like a little bit easier. Hey, everything's up. Hey, everything's down. Hey, we're only looking at the great cars going up. Whatever. We've had that great car conundrum forever. If you're looking to buy something, buy the number ones barely exist. I mean, there's the angels dancing on pinheads. So you're looking for a 2+ car. You can, I'm not going to say you can never go wrong, because you can spend too much money on a collector car, but the ones that'll make you happiest are either former number 2+ cars that have been driven down to number 3s. My favorite car, because somebody spent a whole metric ton of money on them, and now they're a really, really, really super nice driver, or a number 2 condition car that you want for your stable, for your collection. So I mean, all those things come into play.
Awesome. Well, as always, Dave, thanks for joining us on the Collectibles Podcast, and we'll have to have you on again to give us another update in the future.
I'm around. Thank you much, Greg.
Cruising down the street in a retro ride, flip a little switch and pop they hide. Then I hit the lights and up they go, like robot eyes in a late night show. Kids on the sidewalk yelling whoa, like I just did a magic show. Forget your Teslas, forget your screens, I got headlamps straight from your dreams. Pop-up headlights, peekaboo glow, winking at traffic everywhere I go. One flips up, the other one too, the coolest thing your Civic can't do. Pop, pop, baby, lights on blast. It's 1988 and I'm driving fast. Pop-up headlights, don't be shy, say hi to the night with your sleepy eye. Miatas, Supras, 944s, waking up their headlights like opening doors. Kids point, laugh, and wave with glee, cause my car's got eyelids, literally. Forget LED and DRLs, I got pop-ups with personality spells. They blink, they wink, they dip, they rise, they're car-shaped cartoons with googly eyes. Pop-up headlights, blast from the past, flashing like they're having a blast. Zooming by with that classic flair, even toddlers stop and stare. So bright, the only thing cooler might be flight. Pop-up headlights, old school fly, still making kids scream, oh my.